The rhythm of healing, the octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. I am KJ Alexander here with my co-host, Tonya Octave, and today we have a lot of important information to dive into. But before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and let Tonya tell a little bit more about herself and what this podcast is about.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tonya Octave, and we are going into Season 5 of Trauma and Social Work Podcasts, where we will be discussing and diving deep into my book called Heal the Mind, 7 Strategies Towards Mental Wellness, Happiness, and Success, Exploring Trauma, Mental Wellness, and Ways to Live a More Balanced Life. And before we begin, just a simple reminder that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended for medical, psychological, mental health, or legal advice. Although I'm a licensed professional, this is not a formal type of treatment. We may talk about things like hypnosis and meditation and things that we would do in a therapeutic, from a therapeutic perspective, but it's not a form of treatment. For individual questions about your wellness, your happiness, and your success, please seek out a professional. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, do call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.
Great, awesome. That was amazing. So with that being said, I want to make sure I tell the audience, if you haven't already, follow this page on Spotify, YouTube, and any other platforms we post episodes on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming episodes in the future. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. My name is KJ Alexander. Of course, I'm joined once again with my co-host, Tonya Octave, continuing our discussion of the Heal Thy Mind book. And picking up where we left off last time, talking about where triggers were stored in relationship health, I want to continue reading from the book. And in the book, you continue to go on about relationships, We are familiar with what an unhealthy relationship looks like because of our interaction. Yet most of us think a healthy relationship is the opposite of prior relationships. This is partly true. For example, an emotionally abusive relationship is unhealthy. Therefore, the assumption is that if there is no abuse, then this is a healthy relationship. However, a healthy relationship is when you understand, accept, and appreciate yourself. You are in balance, and this is a healthy relationship. You will no longer tolerate mistreatment, be disturbed, or negatively influence others. A healthy relationship is within and not external. And I think that was very, very key right there to point out that a healthy relationship starts within oneself and is not dependent on external factors or what's happening outside of oneself. And you go on to give some examples. These are signs that you are moving towards wellness. You set aside time for self reflection and meditation. You show compassion and forgiveness for yourself. You engage in therapeutic processes and guidance. You smile and laugh a lot. You care about the foods and liquids you put into your body. You move your body frequently and try new active things. You love everyone. You forgive everyone. And you show compassion to everyone. Remember that socializing and building relationships is a process you are moving towards. However, there are hiccups in life. It is crucial to get back on track when these occur and accept yourself. And I think that was very well said right there. And my first question I would like to ask is, you mentioned, the hiccups in life and it's crucial to get back on track. But what does a healthy relationship look like in your own personal opinion, whether it be romantic or platonic? And when those hiccups do occur, what are some advice you have for people to try to get back on track?
Thanks for asking that question. So, when we think about healthy relationships, think about you in relationship with someone else or something else. Because relationships, I don't want to limit the mind to our friendships or our family relationships. I want it to be a little bit more expansive, the relationships we have with our work, how we feel we show up in terms of that, the relationships we have with the community that we live in or part of or participant in. And so what is a healthy relationship when you, the individual, can still be kind to yourself in that relationship, can still demonstrate forgiveness and compassion in that relationship. So, although work as an example, you might not enjoy going to work. You might feel some way about your boss or the other employees or the people that maybe you're servicing. In terms of that, how kind are you when you show up to work? Are you giving yourselves breaks throughout the day? Are you making for sure that you're checking in with yourself? Are you taking time out to maybe breathe and being more consciously aware? So, how are you having positive self talk? So, are you working with the mind instead of saying, I hate this job? So that's where all your energy is. Can you work with the saying, I am growing so much in this job? Because maybe
Mm,
some of that you're experiencing is pushing you for your growth, not to destroy you. You have to recognize that you have needs, and are you honoring that without feeling guilty? And there's this idea. I remember growing up and my mom kind of saying to me, well, you can't be selfish. And so that was one of those things that kind of was repetitive about me showing up in this selfish ways. And as I got older and I started to kind of reframe that, because I think people have a common definition of what they think is selfish. I didn't want to express it as being selfish, although a little bit of it is, but I kind of say I'm self energizing. And so, if this body is a machine, how can I self energize? That means when I get up, I have to do my morning rituals to be self energizing. That means throughout the day, I have various rituals that I engage in that bring energy into this physical body. And I have to take care of myself so that I can show up with patience, I could show up with kindness if I overexert myself, because that's what I've done in the past. And I've given to everybody else. I've given to my kids, I've given in relationships, I've given to my work. What I learned is my battery kept getting depleted. When I started to reframe that and say, hold on, let me take care of me first. Like when we get on the airplane, put your seatbelt on first. I learned how to feed myself first. And I'm not talking food feeding, I'm talking soul feeding. What does my soul need first? As when I wake up in the morning, that I think that I get to have a morning breath and I appreciate the things that go on throughout the day as a means of helping me to grow, not to destroy me. So part of it is working with the mind, moving that negative self-talk to positive self-talk. It's honoring what you need. If I'm thirsty, am I going to go dehydrated all day? Or am I going to stop and try to find some really good, I probably would get box water because I don't get plastic bottled water anymore. Like, how am I going to honor that? In the past, I would have gone all day because it would have been an inconvenience to stop to get some water knowing that I was dehydrated. And here's a big one. And I don't know, and I would be even curious about it. I see this more in women, but I am starting to see this, but maybe in a different light with men. And maybe you can share some insight on that, but that's boundaries. The experience I have seen and have heard stories about is this difficulty with setting boundaries with other people. What do you think about that in terms of how you show up or how you've seen other men show up in the world? Are there boundary concerns, or are we really good in terms of the male gender in general? Because we're all making generalizations here about how men show up with boundaries.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is a definitely an issue people need to work on. Me personally, I don't really have too much of an issue with it, but I can see how other people may have issues setting boundaries, upholding boundaries. And I think it's important because when you think about what a boundary is something that makes you who you are. Same thing with, a country has a territory and they feel like they want to maintain their territory to maintain who they are culturally. It's the same thing with the person, maybe if a little bit to a lesser degree, but I think it's important to have those boundaries up front. And for men, for guys, it may be a little bit harder because we know peer pressure is a real thing, and in some cases, guys may be more susceptible to peer pressure than, let's say, a woman would. In some cases, due to the male ego is very strong at times, and males can be swayed to do what their friends want to do at times, whether it's right or wrong. It happens all the time. So I would say that for men, it may be challenging to uphold those boundaries, but it can also be the same thing for women. I think it's a case by case basis, but I would just say it's important to know upfront. Just keep in mind you have to know who you are and what you stand for, and those core values have to maintain and be intact. And then from there, just maintain your moral compass, and you should be good to go with whatever decision you make.
I love that. Core values. So figuring out what are your core values. One of mine is truth. Am I honest? And how am I
Yeah.
expressing my honesty in ways that can be received? How am I expressing in terms of compassion? And then you mentioned sometimes guys may have challenges with boundaries, and the description you gave may be more like in those friendships. Like if your friend wants you to go somewhere and he's like, come on, let's just do it. We're going to go to this party. It'll be fun, or whatever the situation is. Like sometimes maybe saying no and honoring that you need to sleep versus hang out with friends might be an experience that may happen more with men. With women, and so this might be cool for you to kind of hear too. My experience is that women struggle sometimes to say no to others, particularly in romantic relationships. So if you're dating someone and maybe you really don't want to go to a family event, but your partner is like, well, it's my family, you should show up. You might still be inclined to go, and you may honor the other person, even though that may mean that you don't want to show up in that way. Like you don't want to again, and you might overexert yourself. Also, there might be in terms of like parenting and kids and setting boundaries with kids. Fathers may more likely say no sit on the couch and be fine and not have to have any agitation in the thought, because no men know and they go on with their life. Women, sometimes when they're saying no, we're going to ruminate on it a little bit, like, oh my God, did I do the right thing? Maybe I should say yes. Is there going to be like something like, can there be a yes or no in the middle of it? And so like, one of the things that I have appreciated about men along the way is, like, I always feel like they're good setting a boundary and taking care of themselves, in the sense that they will take time out through the day. If they're tired, they're going to like do something to sit on the couch. If they feel like it's too overwhelming, I hear stories about this. If it's going to be like, they prepare. So when they get off work, they get home, there's this period where they're just sitting in the car, and that might be listening to music, that might be talking on the phone, whatever it is. But there's this moment of just sitting in the car before they transition to the house. Women typically get home, immediately get out of the car, go in the house, and then start they don't have that transition period. And so one of the things about the male gender, as I say, is that we all can learn from each other. And one of those for women is we can learn to have transition periods like our male counterparts do. And that we don't always have to be fast. We don't always have to multitask. These are the things that is creating agitation in our mind, that it's okay to do one thing and sit. Like, it seems simple, maybe because you're a guy and you're like, yeah, it is okay to do one thing. For us as women, we struggle with that a little bit.
Okay.
And so it makes me think of like, what are like those boundaries, and having those boundaries and protecting your space, your peace.
Yeah.
And then I say celebrate the good stuff that happens. And even if you think it's the bad stuff that's happening, it actually is good stuff in another way, because you have to rewire how you think about it. And so like, there are all these wins if you look for the wins, but if you are experiencing failures, are you just looking at the situation like a failure? So working with the thought to kind of change that can be another milestone. And then also allowing yourself some rest. Like, we don't have to keep moving around as much as we do. We can sit in stillness. I feel like there should be a healthy boundary. And usually what I give in terms of suggestions for women is, for women, we need to be more patient and we need to sit in stillness more frequently. For men, we need to be more active and we need to be more involved. And so it's about finding that healthy balance between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And it can be hard to sit still and do nothing for extended periods of time. That's why I feel like meditation can be hard for some people, especially for extended periods of time. If we try to sit down and do nothing for 30 minutes straight, that first 5 to 10 minutes, you're gonna have all these thoughts racing and entering your head, a bunch of random ideas and thoughts. It's gonna take about 5 to 10 minutes just to get those ideas out of there. And in the next 20 minutes, you can actually sit and be still. But it's hard for people, even adults and young children, to sit still for any significant amount of time. But I think that is a skill we need to work on and practice at and get better at, for
And
sure.
it's so easy. If I can
It
convince you of
is.
this, sitting still is so easy. And you know why? Because you don't have to do anything. This was someone told me about meditation. Meditation is so easy because you don't have to think. And I was like, that makes sense. It's just getting to the process of really trying to integrate
Yeah.
that and believe that. So sitting in stillness is so easy because all you have to do is do it. And once that agitation arises in the mind, then you work through it. You breathe through it. You might do an affirmation through it. You might do a mantra through it. So there's tools and techniques you can use along the way to kind of help control those thoughts. But if you can just start to tell yourself it's easy instead of it's hard, you're already developing a wellness plan because you're working with the thought. And you don't have to believe the thought. You don't have to believe it, because people will tell me, well, I don't believe that. I would be telling myself a lie. Well, really, you've been telling yourself a lie for many years. And the lie was that it was difficult to meditate, when meditating can be one of the easiest things, because all you're doing is sitting and breathing, connecting to the breath. That's it. You don't have to do anything. There has to be no movement in the body. We're just in a world where there's so much agitation that we think differently.
Yeah. No, that is a real fact right there for sure.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
in the book, you go on to list some more ideas to improve relationship health in your life. We cover some of these, but I briefly mentioned, spending time alone, engaging in physical activity, going to see a movie without a phone, start a new hobby, write a letter or make a video to your younger self or older self, listen to music or go to see plays that are different rather than familiar, and travel and try new things to discover who you are. And I wanted to ask quickly, why do you think, why is it so important to do things like going to places without a phone or trying to see new things that you haven't been familiar with? Why is that so important in order to improve or maintain a healthy relationship with oneself?
When I reflected on that, I reflected on the idea of what did I do to start developing a relationship with myself. And remember last time we talked about this idea is you can go get a bachelor's and you can spend 4 years on a degree. You can go get a doctorate or a master's and do additional training. And how well do you become, right? Like you become the expert. And we talked about how much time are you spending to become the expert of you? How do you get to know yourself? Are you spending 4 years dedicated to just get to know you? Well, you actually can intentionally give yourself experiences during this bachelor degree of getting to know you. And one of that may be like, what would it be like to go to the movies by yourself if you're used to going with people all the time? And how do you feel out? How do you deal with the sensations and the thoughts and the uncomfortability? You might discover some things. What is it like to go eat without being distracted? Because we're always on our phones. So, not having these distractions, what would it be like to be in an environment and just sit with yourself and notice what happens as a part of your internship in getting to know you? So, these were just examples. All of the examples I've done, I mean, I've been to plays, some of them have been a little bit different. Some of the things that I've done, I was like, I did it one time, don't probably need to do it again. Or I've been in a situation, I was like, oh, that was a little dangerous. I'm kind of glad I got out of it. And some of them were like, I didn't even know I was going to like it. Like, oh, this is pretty cool, like engaging in things that I wouldn't normally necessarily do, maybe because of cultural norms and ways that are put upon us in terms of how we're showing up. So like being a bi-ethnic woman, I, in my mind, had thoughts about things that were appropriate because of my race and things that wouldn't be appropriate because of my race. And then I ventured out of that and I felt like, well, I kind of found some joy in some other stuff that maybe wouldn't necessarily be culturally experienced more in the whole scheme of things. And
Okay.
so along with that is like engaging in those activities. And when I think of like, well, what is that healthy relationship I have with myself? Well, what would be a healthy relationship you have with someone else where there's mutual respect, where you can have that person feel seen and valued? So, are you seeing yourself for who you truly are, and are you valuing yourself? And I say this, and I'm curious because when I say, "Am I valuing myself?" That's going to probably mean that I can. If I value myself, I'm going to give myself clean water.
Mm,
I'm probably not going to put soda in my body because I know too much about what soda does to the body to value myself. If I value
mm,
myself, I'm going to probably have a nice bowl of salad. I'm not going to have a beef burger because I feel like that is a part of I'm honoring the values that I had and not conforming to social norms. So I don't do it a lot, but my friends still do happy hour. And I sometimes will show up to happy hour. Honoring myself in those situations it's amazing how nobody has hot tea at any of these places. So I experienced what it was like to order hot tea at a bar. And boy, do
mm.
people give you looks and thoughts and opinions about why are you even asking this? And so
Yeah.
I've learned how to just do water, or like water in a cranberry juice, and be more social and observant. So I'm giving myself that experience versus like in a collective what everybody else may be doing for happy hour. And this is not about judgment. This is about honoring me. So how can I show up and honor me in those situations? How can I
Mm.
communicate? Am I honest, or am I saying what other people want to hear? But not am I brutally honest. Am I honest in a way that makes you feel horrible and like you're less than me, right? Is my honesty driven by the ego that's out of control, or am I honest and coming from a place of compassion? And that's why I said where other people can receive it. So that would determine that healthy relationship. Am I honoring myself in the relationship? Am I finding balance? Is there a balance between me being dependent on me and knowing myself, and being independent and knowing myself? So even when you think about what's a healthy relationship external, in the book I talk about domestic violence. We would probably agree now in 2025, the year 2025, that domestic violence is probably a sign of an unhealthy relationship. So, how would I reverse that thought? Am I being domestically violent to myself if I break it down? So, I'm not hitting myself in the head. So, maybe I could say, oh, that's a healthy relationship. Ooh, but what are the thoughts that I'm telling myself? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough, right? Like if a partner said that to you, you're stupid, you would say it's domestic violence. So why would it not be if you're telling yourself, I'm too stupid for this job?
Mm.
How is that helpful? How is that healing? Unless it motivates you or does something internally for you in some capacity. And the
Yes.
ego will try to convince you of that at times. How can that be helpful for you versus saying, I'm going to love myself through this experience and appreciate all the ways that I'm going to show up in the next couple of moments? So that healthy relationship, we can talk about what would you do externally, redirect it internally. And I gave the example of like, how would we look at it in terms of a domestic violent relationship? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts about that in terms of, you know, having that relationship, a healthy relationship with you? How do you evaluate whether or not you're moving towards a healthy place in a relationship, or are you being domestically violent towards yourself
Mm.
in your
Yeah.
relationship with yourself? How do you evaluate that?
Man, that's a great question. That's a great question. I think it's hard. It's hard for everybody, but I think it's important to point out, like you said, we talk to ourselves all the time. And if you wouldn't like it if somebody was talking negative about you, why would you talk negative about yourself?
Mhm.
And it has the same effect. And we can't expect other people to treat us with respect if we don't first respect ourselves. And that's holistically, whether it be how we talk to ourselves, how we think, how we eat, how we diet and exercise. It all comes down to how we treat ourselves is how others are going to look to treat us. And maybe that is why some people have issues in relationships. Maybe they don't respect themselves enough or treat themselves well enough. And then people may be able to sense that and feel like they may not need to be as respectful or maybe even disrespectful towards you. So
Mhm.
that may be a reason right there. But I feel like, and I'm no mental health professional, but I do think that it's important to know what you like, what you don't like, try different things, have those experiences with yourself. Some people never really get out of their comfort zone. So their comfort zone could be a toxic environment. And because they never get out of it, they're just stuck in, let's call it, comfortable toxicity. And you mentioned a lot of good ways to get out of that zone, but because it's so comfortable, people just stay there. And before you know it, it becomes a lifestyle. So that's kind of how I look at it. What do you think about that?
There's two words that come up, particularly with women and in the African American community: the B word and the N word.
Mm.
And I'll
Yeah.
start with the N word because, I have read a lot and have many of conversations that have been very, very excitable
Yeah.
when it comes to the N word. And at somewhere along the line, we've learned the way to change the way it was pronounced. We've learned how to use it In our mind, we've convinced ourselves that this could be a form of connecting with someone and showing respect. And so, although it used to be bad, we can reframe it to be good and not think that it doesn't have a psychic impact on us. And so, when we, even with the N word, I would say, would you say that to yourself? Most people will be like, yes, if they are already using that
Yeah.
language. Because of the way that in the mind they've been able, as I told you, the mind's going to convince you of some things. And then I say, we all are going to die. And I'm now going to share my belief. My belief is at some point, there's going to be some sort of judgment. And I think that is among most of the religions that would also support there's something that happens when the physical body dies, there's some sort of judgment. And then I say, well, when you arrive at that judgment, if you would call your best friend and your kids the N word, and then you would call yourself the N word, when you get to that judgment, would you call God the N word? Because then at some point, you have to know if you wouldn't call God that, that means that psychically something's being done to you where you thought it was okay to call you that or somebody else. Let's play around with the B word. Women do it. Women call themselves that. They call everybody else. Now it's kind of like a status thing. I'm this bad, like stuff like that, right? Like, and so would you call yourself that? Yeah. Would you call other people? Yeah, this is my homegirl. Absolutely. Would you call God that? Ooh. Point of clarification. You need to think about what's psychically happening internally to that thought process and what you're doing.
Mm.
And then I
Yeah.
say, how can you make this even? What would you call yourself divine? I would. Would you call yourself wanting to be uplifted? Yeah. Would you call someone else divine? Yes. Would you call God divine? Absolutely. So, when the ego tricks you, you have to come up with other ways to try to figure it out. And I thought about how I could express what this would do psychically, because this has been, we could talk about this in the Black community for years and years and still really have no understanding. And so the way that I think about it is, what would you call God when you have that conversation? Should be the same conversations you're having here on earth.
Mm.
Now, that's the
Okay.
spiritual part.
Yeah. Easier said than done, right? For
Is
sure.
it?
For
Or
some
can it
people,
just be
maybe.
done and be just as easy?
Yeah. It
Can we
definitely can be
have
done
the
easily.
capacity to reframe our thinking, knowing that don't have to limit myself to how I've been conditioned using these words. I can learn how to show up with how I authentically want to show up, knowing that this is going to bring me to a healing space. And maybe that big question is what will I do? What conversation am I going to have with God about it? Do we think God is okay when we call ourselves the B word or the N word?
Mm.
I don't, is that in a spiritual text? Like we get to, I think if it was in domestic violence, we would say, if your boyfriend or girlfriend called you that, we're going to say that's domestic violence. He called you the N word. He called you the B word. But yet we're saying it's okay with us. I'm saying,
Yeah.
is it okay with God? And that's the spiritual connection. Even if you don't believe in religion or you feel some way about the connection of God and the creator, you have at least had some thoughts and ideas about what it would be like when you pass over. And maybe even if you don't, maybe it's a point of reflection now for you.
Mm. Yeah. There's definitely a lot to consider and think about in that regard.
Does it make you think differently?
Yeah. You definitely give some new perspective. And I think that people should consider everything you mentioned when it comes to with self-talk and relationships with themselves. I think it's a very important place to start. Before you can help anybody else, you first have to help yourself and get that solid foundation. So yeah, I
So
would
think
agree with
about it
that.
though, even in a deeper level. There probably has to at least be this belief that God created all things.
Yeah.
So God means created me. But the creation that God made, I'm calling the B word and the N word. How do you think God feels about that?
Yeah. Probably
God
not
made
well.
people that we like and we don't like in terms of how they show up in the world. God still made that. And we call them certain names by that.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I think what we call ourselves, and naming is so important, all throughout, human life. We give so much power to names, good and bad. And it's important to know these words carry energy, and they carry things along with it that can transfer through generations. That's why, we have last names. We want to carry on a legacy through a name. And good or bad, it's important to, have the proper name and understand the meanings of these words. That way we use them in the proper context. And, nobody should be talking to themselves as if they're anything less than a creation of God, which is what we all are, like you said.
A
And
creation of God.
yeah, a beautiful creation of God.
Because if you
And
don't
yep.
believe that, that's probably where some of the spiritual trauma comes from.
Oh yeah.
I just recorded a whole YouTube series, 3 videos on spiritual trauma. The first one talks about
Mm.
spiritual trauma and how it is a trauma. The second one goes into 5 types of spiritual trauma and sharing some of my experiences in spiritual trauma that I experienced and how I've worked through them over the years. And the third thing is a story about Sarah, which is a collection of stories that I've heard who have experienced and how therapy and therapeutic practices with someone trained and knows about these type of things and has worked in this area can really bring someone to a healing state when it comes to things like that. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
wraps up another episode. I hope today's discussion provided clarity and tools you can use in your daily life. If you're ready to take the next step in the healing journey, I'd love to connect. Head over to my website to schedule a free 15-minute consultation. It is a great opportunity to ask questions and see how we can work together. And while you're there, download my complimentary workbook designed to help you reflect, grow, and move towards mental wellness, happiness, and success. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time. The Rhythm of Healing, the Octaves Method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The Octaves Method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.